So, first things first, congratulations on the movie. It may be one of the funniest things I've ever seen, which I don't say lightly. Um, I know on an independent production like this one, a big element of it, and Kurt, thank you for visually demonstrating, is wearing a lot of hats. So, in that regard, and this is a question for both of you, because I imagine that, especially at the top, there's a lot of different jobs being done by everybody to get things done. So, was there a favorite and a least favorite hat that you had to wear throughout the production?
Oh my God, that's a great question. It's actually really appropriate for our movie because hats play a fundamental part in both the movie and our marketing strategy. I'm gonna let Quinn, why don't you answer that question first? You probably wore more hats than I did.
I don't know about that. I mean, we were pretty on the day. I mean, most of my involvement was obviously being a DP. And then I actually did gaff for about a week very early on in production for some of the shots that our second unit DP, Fidel, was involved with. So, but mostly I was just involved as a DP. I mean, on the day when you're out in the wilderness, it's cold, you have to maybe help out with unloading gear and that type of stuff. But like on the whole, it's like, we were very dialed into our separate roles. I mean, it's all hands on deck constantly when you're in that environment and it's freezing and, there's no one within miles to help you out. But it makes you extremely focused. But on the whole, Mike did such a great job prepping and Ryland that we never were without direction. We always knew what we had to get done, and we're all just, creatively problem solving together and collaborating in like one of the most sort of pretty intimate settings that you can possibly, be working in, because it's like any film set, there's a huge degree of collaboration, but especially when you're also trying to survive in a extremely cold environment, there's just no time to really not focus and keep your eye on the ball. So
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Quinn, there's a video of you in the behind the scenes fishing a beaver like costume out of like an iced over lake. So I know you did a lot more than just DPing. You also had to rescue beaver carcasses from the cold, frigid north.
That was a snippet. Yeah, there's a snippet that was at the very end of our gauntlet of shooting, and it was like 55 degrees at that point, so that felt like we might as well have been shooting in Florida. But no, there was a scene we had to get some pickups, and we went back to northern Wisconsin after like taking about a month off, and it was like a completely different landscape because we had shot there for 3 weeks straight in the blistering cold, and taking a month off and coming back, and half the snow was gone. We still had to get obviously a lot of shots. We shot the whole sequence near the end of the film with the sleds and like the sled racing. That was done in that week in March in northern Wisconsin, and it was like there was just barely enough snow to get those shots done. And we had to get, I can't even remember what we were shooting for what Kurt's talking about. It was like something we had to like shoot a dummy, a beaver dummy, like going into the pond or something like that. And no one wanted to go out onto the ice patch that was in the middle of the lake and fish this beaver costume out, but I did. And then it was like a foot of water, so it was low stakes. It's not like there was any, like my life was in danger, but there's that clip is on the the beaver Instagram if anyone wants to go see that. But yeah, you never know what situation you're going to be in or what hat you'll have to wear at a given time. But we're in it for the love of filmmaking, so we do what you have to do.
I'm gonna go with my worst hat first. Is that cool? The worst
Please.
hat. Start with the negative hat. I think the worst hat is navigating the world of distribution and distribution agreements and digital rights management, trying to understand all of the different types of rights that you can sell and which ones are worthwhile and which ones are not. Very difficult. Felt like I had to be like a computer programmer. Best hat, definitely the marketing, the social media marketing. So I run all the Beavers Twitter, Instagram, uh, and TikTok and all those things. And I love interacting with fans. I love just searching the name of our movie, finding people talking about it, and then just like joking around with them. It's really, really fun to connect with fans directly on social media.
That's awesome. I love that. Talking about the distribution strategy, at what point was it sort of decided that because you had an extended festival run, and then you've sort of adapted this sort of roadshow sort of format. Now, of course, the film is available on Apple and Amazon. So when did it sort of come about that that would be the best solution for the movie as opposed to maybe something more traditional in terms of distribution?
Yeah, well, we made the movie for movie theaters, and we, when we didn't get a big offer after our debut film festival, we spent about a year showing it in film festivals around the world and building our audience slowly that way. And we realized pretty quickly we had a great film for theaters. Like we just watched audiences loving it. And the trouble was when we were talking to a lot of distributors, like a theatrical rollout is a lot of work. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time. There's no guarantee that theaters will play you for that long. So we couldn't find a distributor to do that. So we ended up keeping theatrical rights and trying to do it ourselves. And when we were successful, which we're really excited about. So we started with that Great Lakes Roadshow. And the simple thing there was just calling theaters that had played it during festivals in the Midwest and asking them to play it again. And because they had the memory of a good screening at the festival, we were able to open the door. And then based on that, we partnered with a theatrical booker who had relationships with theaters all over the country and was able to show them videos and photos of people enjoying the film on the roadshow. And that really, really started like opening up the gates for theaters to book the film all over the country. So, even though we showed up in person to kind of get it rolling, now it's played in over 180 cities across the United States, mostly in historic and indie theaters, like the kind of theaters that are going away, the kind of theaters that are struggling to stay in business. And we feel like really happy that we were able to give them like a film that was just a rollicking good time for people in a historic theater. It's been really fun.
That's awesome. Quick anecdote, because I actually got the chance to see the film twice in theaters, both at our local, what I would lovingly describe as a hole in the wall sort of theater. And it was packed both times. And you're absolutely right that it really plays well with a crowd and with an audience. I like that in the marketing for even the home release, there's a lot of encouragement about like the watch party element of
Yes.
it, like getting together a group of people.
Yeah, I think people need to get together. Like, we are connecting virtually all the time, which is fine, but like remember these thing called movie nights, right? And we were a little worried that when it went on video on demand, that our reviews might go down. And so honestly, we were like, let's encourage watch parties because this is a movie made to be enjoyed with friends, with a group, in a packed theater. And so we strategically talked about watch parties, and it's cool because I don't know if you're on this whole, I'm a little too old for this, but like Discord watch parties are like a huge thing. Do you know about this? Like,
I've heard about it, but I've never
yeah.
participated. Yeah.
Yeah, people gather their friends and they all, if they're in different cities and they just watch the movie together on Discord and kind of laugh and joke about it. And like we're all about that. We're all about that. If Beavers can bring people together into like in a way that like that's the cool thing about movie theaters is you're going into a room with a bunch of strangers and you don't know anything about them, but you're all laughing at the same stuff. Like that's really fun.
I love that. Quinn, real quick, I want to talk about the look of the movie. Obviously, it's a film that has a great blend of sort of in-person and digital elements. How did you and Mike sort of figure out or negotiate the balance of that? And if my understanding is correct, you're shooting over the course of about 4 years. How are you keeping things looking consistent throughout that whole process?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Mike and Ryland both were just they did their homework and they spent so much time up front just knowing to the frame what they wanted to do. I mean, and Mike had spent at least I think 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, storyboarding every single shot. So there's a giant binder full of, animated frames that were like cartoon level quality frames. And it could have been an animation, like there could have been a whole animatic that could have been the movie, but um, Mike wanted to shoot it practically. So we knew every day we said, okay, we have to get through these frames, these 15 frames, whatever they are. We have to get a high angle. We have to leave space in the lower left frame because he's going to put a boulder in and post. And so he had the cohesiveness of the look was, taken care of long before I was even involved in this case. Um, but Mike called me up October 2020, and he's like, "Hey man, we're doing this, this film. It's crazy. Like I think I've talked to you about it before, but I want you to DP it. If you're gonna feel like a camera operator some days, it's gonna be super cold." I'm like, "Please, let's do it. Sign me up. I'm very excited. It sounds incredible." And I had seen Mike's and Ryland's previous feature that they did, Lake Michigan Monster, And I knew that they were extremely talented and they knew what they were doing. They've been collaborating since they were, teenagers. So I knew that the rapport was, pretty incredible to begin with. So, the look is highly influenced by, like Buster Keaton, silent film era, cinema, and Guy Madden, Three Stooges, very slapsticky as well. But, the movie is just, it's like thousands of ideas, thousands of jokes that are just strung together. And watching that unfold and being a part of that, which is so incredible. And I'm just so grateful to have been there. But we just knew every day, every morning, like Mike would just go through the binder, be like, okay, we got these crossed off, these frames are done. Now we got these 12 to go. And we would do scouting sometimes on the day or a few days ahead of time, or sometimes we'd have to find, improvise and like double a location for a frame. There was a lot of like setting up a green screen in the woods on a goalpost, just like this green tarp we used. It's like 20-foot by 20-foot tarp to get a lot of shots, just so the lighting would be consistent with the environment. It worked really well. But the look was really just, directly out of Mike's brain from a long time of just letting it boil and come to fruition. So it was just, there was a lot of collaborating as far as like, how can we accomplish these shots and, what techniques can we use? I spent a lot of time up on a ladder, getting a lot of high angle shots of like footprints and, Sherlock and Holmes, like finding bodies and that type of thing. But it was an incredible team effort. So, but hats off to Mike and the team for pulling this off and just putting in the homework and the preparation to make it happen. Because like, again, like there's no time when you're out there on location and, you have so much daylight because it gets dark at like 4 or 5 p.m. and you have to drive 2 hours in the morning. There's just really no time for a lot of, creative problem solving. I mean, you have to do that, but it's like you have to go in knowing what you need fundamentally. So there's a lot of improvising, but again, like so much work was done ahead of time. And the black and white look was, really helpful we shot everything 1080p in black and white, mainly for the streamlining process of editing. Because Mike would do edits at the end of every day. We would shoot, 8 hours, 6 hours, whatever. And Mike would bring that footage into the cabin and he would edit everything and do rough VFX so we could all watch it and see what we're doing. Like, because even with everything so well planned out and meticulously plotted ahead of time, there's still moments where we're like fighting the elements, we're fighting time, and it's like, hey, we just got to get this shot. And Mike has everything in his brain. He had the whole movie in his brain, like years ahead of time before anyone else. So he is just doing what he can with the team that we have to bring it to life, obviously. But so we'd be shooting and then I'm like, okay, I think we have what we need, but like, man, it just seems like, okay, I hope it felt very fragmented when we shot it, but we'd bring it back in, Mike would edit it and it would always work. It always made sense. And it was so great for the morale of the crew. There was never any lulls throughout the entire production. Morally, we were always in very high spirits. We always felt very purpose driven. So yeah, it was an incredible experience in that regard.
That's awesome. I love to hear it. For both of you, do you have a favorite gag from the movie?
Well, my
And I
favorite
know there's a
gag.
lot to choose from.
Yeah, okay. Well, here, let me think. My stock answer is unfortunately the one that's everyone's favorite gag in the movie, which is this long sequence where he tells the life story of a bunny family through Calvin and Hobbes footprint type comedy. And like that entire gag took so long to put together, like 4 years of just layering things, right? So that's probably my favorite, but my second favorite is the decoy beaver gag where Ryland Jean Kayak kills a beaver to infiltrate the beaver castle and makes his own kind of like really, really crappy version of a beaver outfit, and then takes a rock and just, tries to break the ice with it. And the guards are watching him. I mean, just so many great layers to that gag that I really love. That one always cracks me up to this day. Quinn, how about you? What is your favorite gag?
No one's asked me actually. It's a great question.
Oh, it's a great question.
The footprint wedding sequence that you mentioned, Kurt, is like, that's got to be one of my favorites too. That's an easy one to pick because it's so original and unique just in terms of that storytelling. But what else do I like? I also love the dogs playing cards and they're slowly getting picked off, and the the card game is changing in accordance to how many numbers they have. I think that's pretty brilliant too. So that might be my favorite as well. So
Yeah, I definitely busted a gut when they got to the solitaire. I thought that was just so
yes.
clever.
Yeah, because I don't think you pick up on the card. Like, I don't think you pick up on that part of the gag right
Right.
away
It's subtle.
until you see him playing solitaire, and you're like, oh my God,
It's
they've been
subtle.
playing different games this whole time. It's a
Hmm.
really interesting structure.
Yeah. Hmm.
I love that. And then on a similar note, is there an element of the film, having sort of spent so long putting it together piece by piece, that you're sort of the most proud of?
Well, I wasn't on set, so I'm just the producer guy. Quinn,
Mhm.
is there a sequence that you're most proud of?
That's interesting. What I talk about a lot is actually the wolf fighting sequence that happens. I think it's the end of the
Mm.
first act. But just because when we were filming that, and that's obviously in line with the dog gag that we talked about with the cards, but we were shooting that. That was in outside of Milwaukee, and that was early on in production. This would have been January 2021. And it wasn't insanely cold. In fact, that night we started shooting, it was pretty rainy. It was like rainy and snowy, and it was very not ideal for what we were doing. And there's a moment even when you see Wes takes the jug of liquor out of Ryland's hands and he pours it on the fire, and there's like all this like water, these water droplets on the lens, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like, oh, it's such a flaw. We can't embrace that. We have to do it over. And Mike's like, no, it's great. Look, it looks awesome. Let's just keep going. And it works. It's like, so great for the grit of that movie in that moment. But that night was, started, it was raining and it was cold and it was dark and it was nighttime. And as we kept shooting that sequence, we were doing all the dog shots, we were doing the close-ups of their coverage, and then we're doing the moments where that first dog or the last dog in that sequence gets taken by the wolf. But the weather was changing. It was like raining, then it was freezing rain, and then it was snow by the time we were shooting the wolf fighting sequence of the wolf epic. So it worked out perfectly, and it was like just crazy, and like we're just handheld, and we have like a light panel or two. We're just like flying them everywhere. Mike got a flashlight off screen, and it just worked amazingly. So I think that might be my favorite night of filming, just because of how the timing with the weather worked out, the natural elements with the storyboarding and the energy of that night worked out. So that sequence, just it in the film, it just breathes so well because it's like actual snow and it's chaotic and it's messy. But
Yeah,
just
I think Wes Tank, who
yeah.
plays the master fur trapper, the Santa Claus character, is like actually holding a burning log and
Yes.
like
Yeah.
sweeping it around.
Yes. Yes. For as many natural elements or as many fake elements as there are in the movie VFX, like there's a lot of just an equal amount of practical as well. So it's like a very unique blend, honestly, for any film to have that. But yeah, it was a real log he was wielding against there were definitely some real impacts, I think, on the wolf mascot, the outfit as well. But
Oh
you
no.
can take it for the team.
Kurt, so since you weren't
Yeah.
part of production, at what point did you sort of join the party, and what was it that attracted you to the project?
Oh, I just mean I wasn't on set because it is
Hmm.
cold out there.
Oh, that's fair.
So I saw my day job. I have two partners, and we own an advertising agency in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just a very small company that does like corporate video and commercials. And I was at the 2018 Milwaukee Film Festival, and I saw their first movie, Lake Michigan Monster. So this was 2018 now, so 6 years ago. And the three of us got together in a bar, and they pitched me on this movie that they called The Revenant but funny. And I was just like, okay, whatever, guys. Like, I just saw like Michigan Monster and it blew my socks off, and you made it for 7 grand. How much do you need? And they said $100,000. And I was like, all right, I think we can wrangle up $100,000. I think we can make this happen. Um, and so then my business partners and I raised the money, and then connected Mike and Ryland to like more people in the Milwaukee filmmaking network. And then they went and shot it up north, and we worked on advertising. And then when the movie was done, then now I've come back around to sort of manage and spearhead the distribution of the film and the marketing of the film.
Wonderful. For both of you, what's your sort of ideal scenario? What do you see as the future for Hundreds of Beavers? Like people still talking about it a few years from now, or just sort of what kind of legacy would you like the film to leave?
That's a great question. Hopefully, it inspires people to make more films and just it'll become hopefully like a cult classic, if nothing else. It's very unique in theme and the setting and the execution, and Hundreds of Beavers as an idea in itself is just I don't know when we're gonna see that again on this scale or this level. But hopefully, it is a very inspiring and entertaining film for many people for a long time to come.
Yeah, I mean, everything Quinn said. I really hope this film gives inspiration to young filmmakers, especially filmmakers or people who are making content on the internet and using digital tools, but don't think they can make like a movie. They absolutely can. And I think, and this movie played in movie theaters. It's not just online. Like, I hope that people can look at the distribution and the making of Hundreds of Beavers and just know that like at a certain point you got to shoot your shot and you just got to go, you got to get out there, you got to wrestle some beavers in the audience, you got to get attention, like just believe in your weird vision. And I really hope that Hundreds of Beavers, and I think People's Joker is another one that kind of feels like it's, like there's isn't
Yeah.
there some there's something in the water and I don't know what
Yeah.
it is, but it seems like us and People's Joker are swimming in the same water where like we're these small indie films that basically self-distributed and actually got theatrical runs out of it. And like, oh my God, actually the theatrical runs are like doing really well. And younger people who were told don't want to come to movie theaters anymore are like coming into movie theaters to watch indie comedy, not just Marvel movies. And so
Yeah.
I'm hoping this kicks off a whole new wave of just like genre weirdo cinema made by the people for the people. I would love that to be Hundreds of Beavers legacy. And then yeah, cult classic would be great. Like if in 50 years people are doing Rocky Horror Picture style, Rocky Horror Picture Show style fan screenings of this with shadow casts, dude, that'd be amazing.
I love that. Well, I think the film is absolutely worthy of that. I really hope to see that. I mean, as a something of a filmmaker myself, I definitely walked out of this with different ideas of what could be a movie and what you can get away with on and still have it look great or feel cinematic in a way that I think with the democratization of sort of filmmaking for younger people or with simpler tools that are now more readily accessible, it's easy to get in this rut of, oh well, I can kind of make a movie look like a real movie with my iPhone, and so you try and recreate
Yeah.
Dune or something, when really the stuff like what you guys are doing or what People's Joker is doing is really, I think, showing a new way forward. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah,
There
you
are
just
no rules. Yeah. Sorry, Quinn, go ahead. Go ahead.
okay. You got to show up with your ideas and your intention and the story you want to tell, and you don't have to shoot 4K or even in color or like on a real camera. We shot in on a GH5, Panasonic GH5, and for the situation, it worked out great because it's a very small package and it makes sense. But yeah, you don't the barrier to entry technologically is much lower now than it ever has been. But just if you got the ideas, you can make it happen. It's really awesome. So I learned a lot on this project, and it was inspiring for me to be involved as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I could talk about this for like 4 more hours. So but I think that it's imperative that because it's so much cheaper to make movies these days, that should push the medium into stranger and stranger directions. Not everyone trying to copy Hollywood, or bring high production value into their movies. I think we're losing a lot of viewers to like TikTok and Reels and all these kinds of like cinemas are because there's a lot of really interesting experimental film going on TikTok and on Reels and on all these social platforms. It's experimental film. And so like I think experimental film in cinemas could maybe, be a direction that we take it. I still think you need strong stories, 3 acts. I still think you should give people a good time, but experiment with the medium, it's use these tools and technologies to experiment and push it forward instead of using it just to like mimic what Hollywood movies look like.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. I love the film. I'm so excited for you both in terms of what happens next. I wish you nothing but success.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
I know we're
Myles.
not quite as cool as Mike and Ryland, so
Are you kidding? Like, I feel like I got a whole different perspective on the thing.
oh, thank you. And good luck on your, so it's Awards Radar is your site?
Yes.
Awesome. Congrats on that, man. I mean, I see you get like really big interviews a lot. Like, well done.
We try to, yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you both.